Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the United States Navy Memorial. I am Sergeant First Class Justin Gonzalez, and I will be your Master of Ceremony for today's event. Now, some of you might be asking, why is a Sergeant First Class standing in front of a room of khakis? Well, last year I had the privilege to participate in Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the induction to become a Chief Petty Officer, which is something that I hold very dear inside of me. Just to tell a quick story, so we can begin today's event. Last year, before I went through that journey, my CMC pulled me into her office and she said, "Justin, whatever you do, don't quit." And I'm looking at her going, "Quit? I don't even know what that means." I mean, I'm airborne. I've been jumping out of airplanes most of my life for the United States Army. Like, I don't quit in anything I do. But I soon realized when I walked into that second phase, the Navy does things just a little bit different and for the right reasons. I often get asked what was my experience like, and a handful of my brothers and sisters in this room could most likely attest to that it was humbling, it was breathtaking, it's a watershed moment in our lives. For me, the thing that I took away from that experience was the person inside me that I never really knew. Still get emotional about it because it was such a big deal for me. And I really appreciate the Navy investing their time in me for that moment. And it's a privilege and an honor to be in front of everyone today. So that being said, enough about me. Let's get today started off. But I just wanted to say thanks and just share a quick story. So thank you. Yeah. Our host for today's ceremony is Rear Admiral Frank Thorpe IV, United States Navy retired, President and Chief Executive Officer, United States Navy Memorial Foundation. Accompanying Rear Admiral Frank Thorpe is MCPON Giordano, MCPON Jim Hurt, United States Navy retired, and Master Chief Dino Midler, United States retired. Guest, please rise for the arrival of the official party, presentation of colors, national anthem, and invocation. Advance the colors. Retire the colors. Ladies and gentlemen, Master Chief Dino Midler, retired, will now offer the invocation.
Please join me as I pray. Almighty Father, source of all life, we begin this ceremony appropriately by invoking your inspired presence among us here and those attending from other locations. This occasion represents a matchless and worthy Chief Petty Officer heritage, for which we give you thanks. Today, as we commemorate 125 years of the Navy Chief, we are reminded that we celebrate devotion to duty, the path of selfless service, and honor to one's highest sense of purpose in this life. In faith, we honor the character and strength of the multitude of chiefs past who sacrificed for our great nation. Grant, O God, your blessing and protection upon all our brothers and sisters who now serve in our Navy, on watch and on station around the globe. Preserve and protect them from the dangers of sea, air, and land, and bring them safely home. Finally, Lord, we ask for your blessings upon the ceremony of thankfulness and honor. I beseech you to prosper each one of us, man and woman alike, and stir within us a willing commitment to courageously serve in harm's way, to defend the freedoms and liberties of our country as we support the ideals of peace and stability throughout the world. All these things I ask in your most holy and precious name. Amen.
Yes, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our host, Rear Admiral Frank Thorpe IV, President and Chief Executive Officer, United States Navy Memorial Foundation.
Good morning. Thank you, and welcome to the Navy Memorial, those of you here and those of you watching around the fleet, around the world. What a great day today to start off the season for the Navy Memorial. This is the first big event of the year, and most appropriate that we celebrate the Chief's birthday as that first event. I'd like to first recognize a couple of VIPs we have here today. MCPON Gio Giordano, welcome back to the Navy Memorial, a common face we see here a lot. We cannot say enough how much we appreciate our partnership with you and with your office. And I have to say that watching the MCPON in action, you really do, in your actions and in your words, epitomize what we at the Navy Memorial stand for, our mission to honor, recognize, and celebrate the men and women of the sea services, past, present, and future, and to inform the public about your service. We are honored, MCPON, to be on your team. Second, I'd like to recognize MCPON Jim Hurt, a Navy Memorial Board member, so therefore one of my bosses, a real leader in our vision, a mentor for me personally, quite frankly, since the last century. I'm probably not supposed to say that, but, and I'm proud to say a friend, MCPON Jim Hurt. A couple other people here that I'd like to recognize that made today happen. Chief Delita Shields and Chief Daniel Hemingway. Great work putting this effort together, and I want to give you all a round of applause. Master Chief Dino Midler, great invocation, and Master Chief Midler is our new Director of Operations here at the Navy Memorial, and you all saw firsthand in his invocation what he stands for and why we are so honored and proud to have Dino Midler as part of this team. So thank you, Dino. And a couple other people I want to thank, Mr. Robert Parker, who actually I don't know where he is because he's off probably making this work. There he is up there. Between Robert and Master Chief Midler and their teams, they put this event together for the Navy Memorial, working with the Chiefs, and thank you for your effort quite a bit. A couple other people, the Navy Band. The Navy Memorial does not do what we do without our partnership with the Navy Band. I saw the voice of God sitting up there. Senior Chief, good to see you. Chief Brandon Almagro, thanks for your leadership here today with the Navy Band. I appreciate it. And last but not least, the Color Guard. You know, we're so proud when we see the colors parade up, march up really smartly at the events here at the Navy Memorial. We stand proudly. It's one of the things that warms my heart at every one of these events is watching my eyes on the colors and my other eyes on the audience, and the respect and the reverence we give at our national flag and the flag of our service. But you know, the interesting thing about it, and I always think about it, there's 4 people standing behind those colors, and they're sailors, and they're young, and they're the future of the United States Navy. So I'd like to thank the 4 folks standing up there. Fireman Antonio Henry from Pensacola, Florida, Seaman Kate Turpin, Seaman Nick Carinci, both from Oceanside, California. I'm not sure how you both got on the color guard together from Oceanside. And Seaman Caleb Fuller from Knoxville, Tennessee. You represent our future, and we are honored that you are here with us today. Thank you very much. So happy birthday. And how appropriate to celebrate a birthday today is the first event of the season of the Navy Memorial. But it's not just any birthday. It's the birthday of the Chief Petty Officer, the most unique role and leadership responsibility of any organization or any company on the face of the earth. And for that reason, we've made a strategic shift here at the Navy Memorial, and we're focusing our efforts on the Chief Petty Officer. This shift began years ago. As many of you know, we had the year of the Chief Petty Officer. It was the most successful year of celebration we ever did. And with this tremendous success and the very strong feelings of our board chairman, retired Admiral John Harvey, and led, quite frankly, by MCPON Jim Hurt, and as I came on board about 2 years ago, we took the idea from that celebration, and we've made the Delbert D. Black National Chiefs Mess much larger and a concept more than just an exhibit. The first thing we did was change the idea of a one-panel exhibit to an entire room. We took the President's Room, which was dedicated to the 8 individuals who had served in the Navy and went on to be the President, and made it the Delbert D. Black National Chiefs Mess because we thought that was the appropriate message to send, and there was enough information, quite frankly, more information than we could put in that room, and so we'll continue to update it. So we'll have, right now there's 3 large interactive exhibits in there. There's 2 movies and there's 2 large display cases, including MCPON Del Black's crow that he wore on his uniform. And we have big ideas for the future as we continue to move that on. There'll be 2 other big elements to that. We'll have programming that will go along, that will educate the American public about this role of the Chief Petty Officer, as well as to make a home for the Chiefs. We want this to be a place where the Chief Petty Officers feel right at home. And the third part is a membership opportunity to make that feeling to be at home, and we want you all to own the National Chiefs Mess. So, Chiefs, happy birthday. Welcome to the Navy Memorial. Welcome to your Navy Memorial. And if you're out in the fleet, we invite you to join us and come visit us early and as often as you can. So thank you and happy birthday.
Thank you, Rear Admiral Thorpe. Command Senior Chief Karen Sigerson will now share some historical significance of the Navy Chief Petty Officer.
Good morning, Rear Admiral Thorpe, MCPON Hurt, MCPON Giordano, brothers, sisters, shipmates, and guests. Today we celebrate 125 years of the Chief Petty Officer, but 125 years isn't the whole story. It's important to understand the rich history of the Chief Petty Officer so we can pass this knowledge down to the next generation of sailors while keeping an eye toward the future. Today I'm going to discuss the history of the Chief Petty Officer starting long before the day we recognize today. Someone here made a good point once. Chiefs were chiefs from the day we were born. We still needed to be tried and tested before we were accepted and able to put on our anchors, but we were chiefs before the Navy caught up with us administratively. The same goes with the Navy. Chiefs were chiefs since the beginning of the United States Navy. These have been the sailors who stood apart from the others, who were leaders with institutional and technical expertise, who held themselves and their sailors to the highest standards, and whose loyalty to their shipmates, the Navy, and the country was a model for others. From the earliest days in the Navy, there was a precedence of enlisted sailors designated by the location of their name on the ship's rolls. The higher the location, the higher the precedence. The first time the title of chief appeared was less than 8 months after the birth date of the Navy, when a cook's mate by the name of Jacob Wasby was designated as the chief cook on board USS Alfred. The year? 1776. 117 years before the day that we celebrate today. The use of the title chief continued from 1776 as a title only, not as a distinct pay grade. In 1863, the Navy regulations first gave some formality to the title, stating, quote, "Precedence among petty officers of the same rate, if not established particularly by the commander of the vessel, will be determined by priority of rating. When two or more have received the same rate on the same day, and the commander of the vessel shall not have designated one of that rate to act as a chief, such as chief boatswain's mate, chief gunner's mate, or chief or signal quartermaster, their precedence shall be determined by the order in which their names appear in the ship's books." This was the first time that the Navy regulations documented the title of chief, but it still lacked the official recognition of the chief being truly distinct from other petty officers. This is where April 1st, 1893 becomes a significant milestone in our history. Chief was no longer solely a title, but it was now a distinct pay grade that recognized the increased responsibilities held by these most qualified enlisted sailors. General Order 409 was signed 35 days before April 1st, on February 25th by President Benjamin Harrison. This may be, in fact, the only historical fact that any of us actually know about President Benjamin Harrison. General Order 409 formalized the enlisted ratings of Chief Master at Arms, Chief Boatswain's Mate, Chief Gunner's Mate, Chief Quartermaster, Chief Machinist, Chief Yeoman, and Chief Carpenter's Mate, as well as Apothecary and Bandmaster. The second edition of every chief's favorite book, the Blue Jackets Manual, was published in 1914, 21 years after the establishment of the chief rating. The Blue Jackets Manual, with a foreword from Secretary of the Navy Josephus Daniels, who you may know from Cup of Joe legend, was the first time a discussion of the responsibilities of the chief petty officer was put into black and white. This discussion came about in Part 4, appropriately titled, "The Subjects Which Chief Petty Officers Should Know." While a 1914 edition online is elusive, the 5th edition from 1917, which is online, has the same chapter title, so we can all agree that it probably has substantially the same information in it, because the Navy doesn't like to change things very much in these books. The 5th edition provides a disclaimer of sorts as an appropriate caution to the reader. Quote, "Inasmuch as every chief petty officer is supposed to be an expert in his own branch, an effort to embody in one book all of the information that each chief petty officer is supposed to know would result in a very large volume, as it would necessarily have to cover every detail of the naval profession. AKA, no big deal, guys, but you have to know everything." This chapter ends with a summary that is so fundamental to everything a chief is that it is equally applicable today, and I'm going to read to you the last part of Part 4 of the 1917 Blue Jackets Manual. 1. You have a position in which you must have expert knowledge of every detail that applies to your branch of the profession. 2. Your duties in training and instructing men of lower ratings are even more important than your duties in connection with the material. 3. Your conduct must be entirely above reproach, and your daily life such as to set an example both from a personal as well as a professional point of view. 4. Whatever may be your special branch, always bear in mind the military side of life. Comply strictly with the formalities of military life and require the same of your juniors. And 5, yours is a profession, a position of honor and responsibility. Do your work from a sense of duty. Be thorough in all you do and require of your subordinates thoroughness and military exactitude. These are powerful words that still hold true today, over 100 years later, to all chief petty officers, except that now we would also appropriately modify number 2 to include women too, as women also need training and instructing. At this point, it would be helpful to take a moment to discuss an important part of our history, the symbols associated with the chief petty officer. General Order 409 was accompanied by a U.S. Navy Regulations circular, which designated the appropriate insignia for the new chief rating. This first rating insignia for the chief petty officer was an arc of 3 joined stripes over 3 joined chevrons. Over the arc was a left-facing eagle, the position of nobility, holding its wings straight out to either side, and the chief's appropriate designation mark, specialty mark. The following year, in 1894, the rating badge was modified and took on the design that we still use today. The wings were raised, each chevron was a separate stripe, and a single arc, or rocker, replaced the 3 stripes that were arced over the chevrons. Now what we get the most jazzed up about. 3 years later, in 1897, the foul anchor as the chief's insignia was first described in the U.S. Navy regulations. This device was to be the letters USN in silver upon a gilt foul anchor and worn on a blue cap. Minor details of the design have changed over time, but the symbol of the chief continues to be the letters USN in silver superimposed on a gold foul anchor. This insignia was adapted as a collar device in 1959 and has remained in use with the same design since then. It would be good to now fast forward a little bit to the more recent history of the Chief Petty Officer. The pay structure established in 1893 with the chief rating as the most senior enlisted rating continued for 65 years until 1958 with an amendment to the 1949 Career Compensation Act. This amendment established the pay grades of E8 and E9, which were commonly known as the Super Chiefs. Advancement exams were held in August of 1958. Chiefs with a minimum of 4 years of time and grade were eligible for Senior Chief, and those with 6 years in their current pay grade were eligible for Master Chief. I'd really like to know who proctored that exam. After the first year, only those who had been promoted to Senior Chief were eligible for Master Chief. And then, of course, the Master Chiefs convinced somebody to do away with the advancement exams. In 1967, the office of the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy was established, along with a special pay grade reserved for this position that we all look at longingly down the corner of the pay charts. For the first time in 192 years of the Navy's history, an enlisted sailor was given a position to use their voice to advise senior-most officers on matters affecting Navy enlisted personnel. This brings our history to the modern day. While times have definitely changed from 1893 until today, what hasn't changed is that chiefs have always been and will always continue to be the backbone of the United States Navy. Thank you.
Thank you, Command Senior Chief Singerson. It is my great honor at this time to introduce our first guest speaker for today, MCPON James Hurt, United States Navy, retired. Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy James L. Hurt, a native of Wyoming, joined the United States Navy in 1966. After attending Machinist Mayday School in Great Lakes, Illinois, he served sea tours aboard the USS Independence, CV-62, and USS Will Rogers, SSBN 659G, and shore tours at Nuclear Power Training Unit, Windsor, Connecticut, and Radiological Repair Facility in New London, Connecticut. After leaving active duty in 1974, Master Chief Hurt enlisted in the Naval Reserve, serving in various selected Naval Reserve units while attending Kansas State University. Returning to active duty in 1976, he served as a Naval Reserve recruiter in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and in 1978 rejoined the regular Navy. Master Chief Hurt served aboard USS Texas, USS Cincinnati, and on the staff of the Nuclear Power School in Orlando, Florida, prior to his tour as chief of the boat aboard the USS Skipjack, SSN 585. He has served as Command Master Chief at Nuclear Field A School in Orlando, Florida, on board the USS Theodore Roosevelt, CVN 71, and at the Naval Training Center, Great Lakes, Illinois. In 1996, he was selected to serve as the Fort Master Chief of Naval Education Training in Pensacola, Florida. He was sworn in as the 9th Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy on March 27, 1998. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, retired James Hurt.
Well, thank you very much, and excuse me, a little bit of allergy here from pollen, and I apologize for you having to sit through that whole bio. Actually, that was probably longer than the history of the Chief Petty Officers. So my apologies. And I'm going to do my best to keep my remarks short today because you're not really here to listen to old number 9. You're here to listen to the remarks of the big kahuna, number 14. And I understand that better than anybody else. Let me just begin my remarks by commenting on something Admiral Thorpe said. We are extraordinarily fortunate. I've been a member of the Navy Memorial Foundation Board now for over 10 years. And we're extremely fortunate here at the Navy Memorial and on the board to first have an incredible chairman of the board, Admiral Harvey, Admiral John Harvey, who has really grabbed the organization by its horns and twisted its neck a bit to move things forward on a very quick pace. But we're also extraordinarily fortunate to have Admiral Thorpe with us. Most of you don't know his background. And I will just tell you, when I was MCPON, I was sitting in my office one day, and my EA came in and said, there is a young commander out here in the outer office that would like to come in and talk with you. And I said, so? And he said, well, he's just recently been selected to be the PAO for the Chief of Naval Personnel. And so I said, well, by all means, bring him in. And he sat down on the couch in the office, which used to be in the Navy Annex. And we began to have a discussion. That was Commander Frank Thorpe IV. And I was really taken with this young guy. First of all, that he would make one of his first stops my office. It showed a sense of respect and a sense of well-being that I thought spoke volumes. I was deeply honored by that visit. And shortly thereafter, he became the PAO for Admiral Vern Clark, the Chief of Naval Operations. And that's when our relationship really took off. And since that time, we have literally been joined at the belt buckle. He has done extraordinary things. We've traveled the world together. We have been very good friends. And he calls me a mentor, but I've learned far more from him than he would ever learn from me. And I told him upon my retirement that I knew, and I swear to God, I knew he would be a flag officer, and I told him he would be a flag officer, and I told him he would be CHINFO, all of which came true. And so when he came to work here at the Navy Memorial Foundation, I was ecstatic. He has a distinction that I absolutely am, well, I'm not absolutely, I'm about 99.9% sure is accurate. He is an honorary Master Chief, and so designated by not one MCPON, but by 2. It is something Terry Scott and I both did, having had the honor to serve with him. So just let me tell you, we're extraordinarily well served. You're extraordinarily well served by Admiral Thorpe here at the Navy Memorial. Happy birthday. 125 years. Can you believe it? 125 years. You know, 25 years ago today, I was on deployment as the Command Master Chief on Theodore Roosevelt. And I had only been on board for a couple of months. One of the first meetings we had with the department LCPOs, 23 Master Chiefs as I remember, was how we were going to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the CPO mess. So that is a bookmark for me that every April 1st, I know exactly where I was on that 100th birthday. We were underway. But when I think about the history of the Chiefs Mess, and that was an extraordinary history, some of it I had not heard before, and thank you so much for doing the research on it. When I think about those first Chief Petty Officers, I often think about what would they think about the mess today? Their expectations of becoming a Chief Petty Officer back in the day, that first year, that first group, the first 10 years, certainly had to be very different from what it is today. And if we had the opportunity for them to rejoin us today, what would they think of us? What would they think of you? I think they would be, one, extraordinarily proud. I think they would be incredibly surprised that they set in motion the wheels that produced the mess that we have today. The mess that we have today has developed over an iterative process that with each generation, they came to the mess only wanting to make it better, taking what they were given through the history, through the endeavors of chief petty officers over the years, and taking that and making it better, handing it off to the next generation. I have seen it myself. I thought the mess that we had back in 2002 when I retired was a pretty doggone good mess. It wouldn't hold a candle to the mess that you have today. When I sit in your messes, as I'm honored to be able to do, as all the former MCPONs are honored to be able to do, I am tremendously amazed, without exception, at how well articulated the issues of the day are. It's not just a bunch of knuckleheads sitting around swearing, thinking shallow thoughts. These are well articulated, intellectual people. The wealth of intellect in the mess today just continues to grow. A lot of that has come about because we have invested ourselves, we the Navy have invested ourselves in pursuing voluntary education in a very meaningful way, and that has manifested itself in the mess that we have today. So let me speak a minute about the mess of today, as I see it from an old number 9 here. I would tell you, when I step back, and you get to see a lot when you're MCPON, but it isn't until after you retire that you step back from it and you get a much broader view of what the mess is and the nuances and the intricacies of how things work. Your brain slows down a little bit at retirement to allow you to actually absorb some of this stuff. As I look at the mess today, from what I see the most incredibly powerful group, singularly group, and unique group of people in the entire Navy. There is no other group like you in our Navy today. There is no group that touches absolutely every aspect horizontally across the entire enterprise as you do. Every command has a chief petty officer. I feel fairly safe in saying that. We might have one or two out there where that's not true. But literally every aspect of the Navy has a chief petty officer somewhere embedded in it. The other thing that has happened partly by tradition, but more recently through technology, you are the most incredibly networked group of people across the entire enterprise. The MCPON can type out an email, and within a day's time, every chief petty officer in the Navy will have that email or the information in that email. It used to be we were networked within the command, then we became networked across the pier, then we became networked within the base, and then the region. Today, you are globally networked. You are tied to each other in a way no other group in the Navy is. The power of that network cannot be understated. You are more incredibly networked than perhaps even the CNO. The other thing that ties you together in a way that no other aspect of the Navy is tied together is a common creed. A creed that tells you what the values are, what's expected. There is nobody else in the military that I know of that is tied together the way you are. If you ever figured out just how powerful as a group you were, or you are, you would make the earth shake. You have that ability. And I'm so proud of you. Now, a lot of your effort has gone into building the mess that you have today. But it's not the power that is so important, but the opportunity that you have as chief petty officers to reach outside the mess cannot be understated. The Navy depends on you in ways and that other services have to embed formal programs and formal training programs. They have to invest tremendous assets to do things such as producing true leadership abilities. For us in the Navy, we don't invest a lot in formal leadership training. And when you look at how we develop leaders, our secret is the United States Petty Officers, Chief Petty Officers Mess. You make up for a lot of that. Your real goal, outside of your technical rating, is to grow and develop sailors, both officers and enlisted. When MCPON Giordano gets up here, if you were to ask him if this were true, I think he would state that it is. Every MCPON I know will tell you one of the things that you experience as MCPON, virtually every flag officer you meet, every successful, what I would deem as successful officers in the Navy will tell you about their first Chief Petty Officer. It's almost like they feel a requirement to do that. What a difference that chief made in their lives. You must reach up and you must reach down to grow and develop sailors. Our Navy depends upon you. You are truly the most unique military element in the entire DoD defense organization. So one of the things that's happened here at the Navy Memorial is our mission here is to honor, recognize, and celebrate the lives of sailors, both past, present, and future, and to educate the civilian populace about them. That's what we do here. In 2012, when we held the Year of the Chief, we thought about a lot of ways that we could honor Chief Petty Officers. One of the ways that I had thought about, and it had been a dream of mine, was to have something, I was thinking about it at the time, called a virtual Chief's Mess. The place where every Chief Petty Officer in the Navy, past, present, and future, could hang their hat and their coffee cup and say, I belong to that mess. I didn't know what it meant at the time, but I will tell you through the leadership here at the Navy Memorial of First Admiral John Tonacek and now Admiral Frank Thorpe, it has become a reality. One of my personal mentors, long before I became MCPON, I had a chance meeting with Del Black, and he became, I don't know why he took a liking to me, but he became a personal mentor of mine. He was a true leader. He was a true pioneer for our Navy and for every Chief Petty Officer. And what they have turned now into the Delbert D. Black National Chiefs Mess is now a reality. Do not leave this building without spending some time there. There's some incredible displays, and it's going to be here forever. We now have a National Chiefs Mess. We are planning great things as a result of that Chiefs Mess. We are going to honor this group of individuals above and beyond what we might honor the rest of the Navy, recognizing the true significance of what you represent here at the National Chiefs Mess. There will be events, hopefully capitalizing on a lot of the former MCPONs. We'd like to think about bringing former MCPONs to fleet concentration areas for leadership discussions and the like. We will have a lot of opportunities to do a number of things. We want this to be every Chief Petty Officer's opportunity to be in a combined Chiefs Mess, not to supplant the one that you perhaps belong to at your command, but to be an addition to. We've got a lot of long ways to think our way through what all of that means. We're going to look for your help in helping us sort that out. But my dream one day will be that when the list comes out for new Chief Petty Officers each year, that the first event that will happen, much like them preparing a charge book and a vessel to carry it in, would be to first and foremost get signed up on the Navy log and to become a member of the National Chiefs Mess. I hope that becomes a tradition. It's just something we do, because the success of what we have here at the Navy Memorial is going to depend on every Chief Petty Officer in the United States Navy being a part of this combined mess. So with that, I'll end my remarks, sit down, and just close by wishing you a heartfelt happy birthday, 125 years. Here's looking at 125 years that only you can make better. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, MCPON Hurt. Please return to the front to accept a small token of appreciation for your trip here and for sharing your sentiments.
Great place for this.
It is my great honor at this time to introduce the next guest speaker for today, who truly needs no introduction. MCPON Stephen Giordano,
I thought I needed no introduction.
as I was.
That's all right. I expect that from one of our newest Chief Petty Officers.
Shots fired.
This is when you can take your seat. Still being tried and tested, I see. All right. No, probably the best thing I did for this group right now was I opened this. I mean, because you probably came in here and you looked at the prestigious group of gentlemen sitting before you and you said, there's two MCPONs sitting up there. This could be a long event. And I know MCPON Hurt, and I saw him sitting there with his little cue card. I'm like, yep, this is going to be a while. I said, I better write mine down. I better stay focused here in the interest of the audience, of course, right? Chief, I'm just messing with you over there. You're doing a great job emceeing this event. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm glad that Admiral Thorpe, you took a little time to not just kind of give a shout out to all the supporting cast, if you will, the band, the color guard, but you called a few of them out by name, which I think is even more important. And just thanks for doing that for them, right? And as you mentioned, they are the leaders of the future, and we appreciate them being here with us today. And each and every one of them in the performance of their duties leading into this event and how they operate every day is a reflection of every Chief Petty Officer. And I ask you to continue to be mindful of that, Chiefs, as you continue to guide our Navy forward in the development of those sailors. So thank you. Thank you, shipmates, for being here and helping us out today. So now I'm going to get into actual formal remarks, okay? If that's all right. And I'll kind of stay scripted here if I can. I tend to run off course sometimes. But, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, families and friends, and shipmates. Admiral Thorpe, I want to thank you for opening the Navy Memorial today, for allowing us to celebrate, not just here locally here in D.C., but across the Navy, across the fleet, celebrating 125 years of Chief Petty Officers. And MCPON Hurt, it's always good seeing you. I appreciate you. Bless you. That was for the sneeze, MCPON Hurt. No, you talked a lot about the impact Del Black has had on you, and I would reciprocate those remarks on the impact you've had on me already, and I appreciate it. Thank you. But also thanks to the entire team also at the Navy Memorial, right? Because it's a whole group effort here. And Dino, appreciate you being here. thanks for the opening prayer, and I know the memorial is very pleased to have you on the staff, all right? But to that whole team, thank you again for allowing this to happen today. It's humbling and a true honor to speak to you on this, the 125th birthday of the establishment of the Chief Petty Officer rate. And to do so here at the Navy Memorial in D.C. just, I think, makes it that much more special. A memorial dedicated, as MCPON Hurt mentioned, to honoring and recognizing our sailors and capturing our maritime heritage for everyone in our nation to experience. And I would love to have had this actually outside of these walls so our community could see and hear the impact of Chief Petty Officers on not just our Navy, but on our nation. And while this day is special for me, today is not about me. It's not about you. It's about us. It's about what we, Chief Petty Officers, past and present, have done together across generations of service. It's about what we continue to do for our Navy as visible, competent, and confidently humble Chief Petty Officers dedicated in leading our Navy team forward and becoming more capable and lethal every day. 125 years ago, the Navy's role in the world was obscure. And for the first Chief Petty Officers of 1893, there was no process known as initiation. There was no Chief Petty Officer creed, no Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, and certainly no National Chief's Mess. Ask the Chief was not yet a household name. However, from these early beginnings, there was one thing I believe these plank owners of senior enlisted leadership instinctively knew, that as chiefs, more will be expected of you. More will be demanded of you. And from that point forward, with each passing generation of chiefs, grew an enduring legacy of exemplary character and devotion to uncompromising higher standards. A legacy of serving as trusted leaders, technical experts, advisors, and mentors, enabling America's Navy to be the most lethal global maritime force. It's a legacy we continue to grow today. We owe extreme debt of gratitude to all of those who have worn the anchors throughout our 125-year heritage, who were pivotal in forging our Navy into the world's most well-trained and premier combat-ready force. And if I may be so bold, I'd request that for the retired Chief Petty Officers in attendance today, if you would please rise for us. Thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifices. For 125 years, Chief Petty Officers have risen to the challenge of the day, risen to being the leaders our sailors, our families, our Navy needs, in turn making us better, stronger, more capable Navy with each passing year, ensuring the mission being it winning wars, deterring aggression, and maintaining freedom of the seas, and in doing so, in many cases, with great sacrifice. Much of which you can learn about as you walk through the National Chief's Mess here at the Navy Memorial. Like Navy Divers Chief Machinist Mate William Baders, Chief Boatswain's Mate Orson Crandall, Chief Metalsmith James McDonald, and Chief Torpedoman John Malowski, each of whom were awarded the Medal of Honor as a result of their heroic efforts in the face of extreme danger, resulting in the saving of the lives of 33 sailors on board the sunken submarine USS Squalus in 1939. Today, we reflect and honor them and all that Chief Petty Officers have done for our Navy, for our country. But we do so realizing there is work to be done. We're at a crucial point in our Navy's history. Our Navy has embarked on a new era where maritime superiority not only means dominance on the seas, but dominance in domains that were unforeseeable 125 years ago. The security environment is becoming more complex, faster paced, and increasingly competitive. To be the Navy the nation needs, we're going to need a bigger, better, ready fleet, more networked, agile, and capable, operated by the most talented sailors and led by chiefs who demand and demonstrate the highest levels of competency and character. Our sailors have always been our greatest advantage in prevailing over any adversary, and we will maintain that advantage as long as the Navy has flexible, innovative, and confident leaders achieving excellence in tougher environments. In the years to come, the Navy will demand and expect even more from its chief petty officers. Now, more important than ever, we must build on the achievements and lessons of the past 125 years. The Navy the nation needs will require chief petty officers to be even stronger and the more lethal backbone in leading the Navy team forward. We must stay focused on deliberately developing future leaders while continuously developing ourselves. Developing enlisted leaders has been an evolving process in our Navy's history. It's essential to stay on the forefront of providing the best leadership to our Navy team in keeping with societal, technological, and operational developments. Following the release of the Leadership Development Framework last year, Chief Petty Officers, leading forward, launched at the opportunity presented and took the helm on designing a means to better incorporate a focused character development strategy into enlisted leader education and training. Today, I share with you that we will soon gift our Navy a new course of enlisted leadership development, one that will align us to our true north. While there is still some work to be done, I'm confident we'll soon give our Navy a way forward, ensuring we'll continue to have the best enlisted leaders serving in the world's premier naval force. As keepers of our heritage, our legacy, we will continue to build on it, in line with our principal idea of teaching and developing our sailors to one day be chief petty officers, better than what we were. We will do so guided by the wisdom of the Chief Petty Officer Creed, that timeless and spiritual living document that inspires us all to be exceptional every day in everything we do in service to our great Navy. It's a document that best represents the expertise, grit, and passion of decades of Chief Petty Officers who shaped the CPO rate into the time-honored, respected, and revered fellowship simply known today as the mess. Recognized worldwide for its distinct leadership in developing sailors and accomplishing any Navy mission. So let us celebrate and reflect today on our rich and storied legacy, but return to our respective deck plates tomorrow invigorated to build on that tremendous legacy through fellowship, good grace, toughness, and an unwavering passion to do great things. I thank you again for allowing me to be part of this 125th celebration. And always remember that of what Admiral Halsey was once quoted as saying, you know, you think those ships float on water. You'd be wrong. They are carried to sea on the back of Chief Petty Officers. God bless each and every one of you. God bless your families. God bless our great Navy. And God bless United States Chief Petty Officers. Happy birthday, Chiefs. Thank you.
Thank you, MCPON Giordano. Please return to the front to accept a small token of appreciation for Sarah and your sentiments. MCPON Hurt, please step to the front for the presentation of the donation check for the Chief Petty Officer Scholarship Fund.
By their hard work from last year.
So much, and let me just very quickly say, I'm accepting this check on behalf of MCPON Bushy. As you know, 1 April, there's a demand for MCPONs outside of number 9 to be speakers in other places. And he is out spending time with Chief Petty Officers right now. But I also want to let you know that we here at the Navy Memorial are working very hard to form a relationship and a partnership with the CPO Scholarship Fund that we think will benefit both organizations as we go forward. Just another opportunity to bring everything together under one roof. So thank you very much, and thank you for your dedication to put this together for us.
All Chief Petty Officers, both active and retired, please rise. Master Chief Jason DeGraff will now read the Chief Petty Officer Creed along with a few first-year chiefs, Chief St. Germain, Chief Greener, and Chief Marlette.
And honorary Chief Petty Officer.
During the course of this day, you have been caused to humbly accept challenge and face adversity. This you have accomplished with rare, good grace. Pointless as some of these challenges may have seemed, there were valid, time-honored reasons behind each pointed barb. It was necessary to meet these hurdles with blind faith and fellowship of Chief Petty Officers. The goal was to instill in you that trust is inherent with the donning of the uniform of a chief. It was our intent to impress upon you that challenge is good, a great and necessary reality which cannot mar you, which in fact strengthens you.
In your future as a Chief Petty Officer, you will be forced to endure adversity far beyond that imposed upon you today. You must face each challenge and adversity with the same dignity and good grace you demonstrated today. By experience, by performance, and by testing, you have been this day advanced to Chief Petty Officer. In the United States Navy, and only in the United States Navy, the rank of E7 carries with it unique responsibilities and privileges you are now bound to observe and expected to fulfill.
Your entire way of life is now changed. More will be expected of you. More will be demanded of you. Not because you are an E7, but because you are now a Chief Petty Officer. You have not merely been promoted one pay grade. You have joined an exclusive fellowship, and as in all fellowships, you have a special responsibility to your comrades, even as they have a special responsibility to you. This is why we in the United States Navy may maintain with pride our feelings of accomplishment once we have attained the position of Chief Petty Officer. Your new responsibilities and privileges do not appear in print. They have no official standing. They cannot be referred to by name, number, nor file.
They have existed for over 100 years. Chiefs before you have freely accepted responsibility beyond the call of printed assignment. Their actions and their performance demanded the respect of their seniors as well as their juniors. It is now required that you be the fountain of wisdom, the ambassador of goodwill, the authority in personal relations as well as in technical applications. Ask the Chief is a household phrase in and out of the Navy. You are now the Chief. The exalted position you have now achieved, and the word exalted is used advisedly, exists because of the attitude and performance of the chiefs before you. It shall exist only as long as you and your fellow chiefs maintain these standards. It was our intention that you never forget this day.
It was our intention to test you, to try you, and to accept you. Your performance has assured us that you will wear the hat with the same pride as your comrades in arms before you.
Navy Chief!
Navy pride!
Navy Chief!
Navy pride!
Navy Chief!
Navy pride!
Booyah!
Booyah!
Rear Admiral Frank Thorpe IV, this concludes today's ceremony. We'd like to thank you, Robert Parker, Dino Midler, and staff for opening your doors for today's ceremony.